So, welcome to the 5th video of the second course, looking at the question, how do we practice in everyday life? And today's theme, Truthful Speech. In the first course, we looked at the theme of working with our mind in meditation. In the second course, working with our mind in everyday life. We've already had a general introduction into ethics, and we've looked at 3 precepts concerning the body. Precepts meaning how we act, what we do, how it's best not to act, what it's best not to do. I undertake to abstain from taking life. I undertake to abstain from taking the not given. I undertake to abstain from sexual misconduct. With deeds of loving kindness, I purify my body. With open-handed generosity, I purify my body. With stillness, simplicity, and contentment, I purify my body. In the last video, we looked at the complexities of sexual activity, sexual relationships in the family, how to be more conscious and more ethical in this area, as well as, on the positive side, states of stillness, simplicity, and contentment, and how to access these positive states, especially through the practice of meditation that exist beyond sexual polarization. So that's what we've done so far. So now moving towards today's theme, from the body to speech, namely what we say, what we write, the words we use, meaning communication. To begin with, I'd like to rejoice in the merits of words. I'll say a little bit more about the practice of rejoicing in merits later. Suffice to say that words are wonderful things. Spoken words, written words, words that are sung even. Words distinguish us from the animals, more or less. Most human civilization and culture depend on words. You can even gain enlightenment from listening to or reading words. So it follows that speech is very important for spiritual life. But let's have a look in a little more detail at why this is so. Firstly, speech is the doorway between inner and outer worlds, between our inner thoughts and how we act in the world. It's a bridge between self and world. Secondly, to a large extent, speech is the basis of our relations with others. We form our relations with others, define our relations with others on the basis of speech. Do you speak with somebody in a friendly fashion or an unfriendly fashion? Do we speak with respect or rudeness? Do we speak warmly or coldly, as if the person is close to us or distant? Are we patient or irritable? So in this way we define how close somebody is by how we speak with them. We define our relationship with somebody by how we speak with them. But thirdly, most importantly, we have a choice in what we say. Even we have an unlimited choice. We could really say anything. Using our ability to choose is vital for understanding what spiritual practice is. Given our ability to choose in any given moment, in any situation. Words are very mercurial. They can express the best in us, and they can express the worst. And they can slip out oh so very quickly, automatically, by force of habit, with so little thought, awareness or reflection. So how do we make the choice, the best choice, from those unlimited possibilities? How do we develop the ability to make the choice, the best choice? This is an important question for our spiritual lives. Okay, so let's look a bit more at developing the ability to make the choice. And to begin with, let's look again at karma. What karma is, what karma isn't. And let's start with making that important point that not everything that happens to us is our karma. People in certain spiritual circles like to say that it is. But it's not what Buddhism really teaches, and it's an important point. How so? We looked at the teaching of universal conditionality, containing as it does 5 orders of conditionality, 5 dimensions of conditionality. And only one of these was karma. It was called the karma niyama. And the karma niyama concerns the sphere of ethics. Only the karma niyama concerns the sphere of ethics, ethical action, actions with conscious intentions, that means. Actions that we consciously intend to do. Actions of the body, actions of speech, and actions of mind. So the whole person with nothing left out. Even though we're looking at speech today, it refers to, the teaching on karma refers to all the precepts. And Buddhism really teaches that an action, words or thoughts are ethical or not, are good or bad karma. based on the state of mind they are done in, the underlying state of mind. And we can see from the earliest texts in Buddhism, the Dhammapada, the first and second verses in the work, at the very beginning of the work, as translated by Sangharakshita, we have experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, and produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with an impure mind, suffering follows, even as a cartwheel follows the hoof of the ox drawing the cart. And a second, experiences are produced, experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows like a shadow that never departs. So this impure or impure mind, or rather this pure or impure mind, we've referred to these states of mind as skillful or unskillful states of mind. So an action's good or bad karma, depending on the underlying states of mind. This means that ethics isn't just about following rules. An important point. It's not just that some things are irrecoverably good and others irrecoverably bad. We need awareness, the presence of mind, to be able to recognize our states of mind on a moment-to-moment basis. And this is the first step. But to take the second step, there's a question: what are skillful states of mind? What are unskillful states of mind? Let's take the second step. Starting with unskillful states of mind. Unskillful states of mind are dominated by greed, by hatred, and by delusion, or by a combination of them. But what exactly are greed, hatred, and delusion? More importantly, how do we recognize them? We all experience them, so Buddhism tells us. Buddhism tells us they're part of being human, part of our state of consciousness, so as to be reborn in the human realm. If we think we don't experience them, some people come, they learn them at Abhavana, they say, when they're introduced to the fourth stage, there's nobody I hate. If we think we don't experience them, this in itself is an example of ignorance. We're not seeing ourselves as we really are. So what are they? Firstly, craving. meaning we want something. Our ego wants something. We focus on ourselves, on what we want, and forget about what others want. Aren't aware of what others want. It's not important what others want. In the context of speech, we say things so as to get what we want. This dominates our mind. This is our motivation, our intention behind our words. And it comes with a feeling of constriction. Secondly, hatred. This time we don't want something. Our ego wants to avoid something. We focus on avoiding getting something, getting rid of something. We forget about others and focus on what we don't want. We're not aware of others. We don't think it's important what others want. Our mind is dominated by not getting what we don't want. These are the intentions. This is the motivation behind our words. And there's a feeling of constriction, subtle or gross. Thirdly, ignorance. Maybe we simply don't understand what's going on. Anything can happen. And anything can come out of our mouth. Maybe just to fill the space, to avoid the discomfort of that silence, feeling a little bit stupid. This sense of not knowing dominates our minds, and trying to avoid that feeling, filling the gap, moving on to a different topic of conversation. That's what dominates our minds, motivates us, gives intentions to our words, and there's a feeling of constriction. Skillful states of mind are the opposite of this. We could even say they are the antidote, the antidotes to these states. So what are the three? What are skillful states of mind? What are the three opposites? The three antidotes even? We'll start in reverse order. The opposite of ignorance is wisdom. Wisdom meaning not knowledge obtained by the intellect, rather something that includes emotional intelligence, includes intuition and direct experience, a sense of knowing what needs to be done and doing it. So the opposite of ignorance is wisdom, and coming with a feeling of expansion and lightness. The opposite of hatred is compassion. It's interesting, in Russian, the word compassion is formed of the two words with and suffering. but suffering with. This implies we don't try to avoid suffering. We don't try to ignore suffering. We don't try to run away from suffering. Metta, in fact, turns into compassion when it meets suffering, the suffering of others as well as ourselves. In principle, metta, compassion, is without limit. It's the ability to face difficult situations, even the most difficult situations, with openness, clarity, awareness, steadfastness, and friendliness. So the opposite of hatred is compassion, and it comes with a feeling of expansion, an expansive feeling. And lastly, the opposite of craving is generosity, or dana. Not generosity here in the sense of giving presents, rather knowing what is needed for the best, for the happiness of all, and giving it. Our intention is to act for the benefit of all beings, every single one. And this is the altruistic dimension. This captures the spirit of the altruistic dimension of the spiritual life. In its more developed form, we're talking about the bodhicitta, the will to attain enlightenment for the sake of all. So the opposite of craving is generosity. And it comes with an expansive feeling, a feeling of expansion. Noticing this feeling is a good sign that we're experiencing this skillful mental state. So, these are this unskillful and skillful mental states which underpin, which underlie all our actions, all our words, all our thoughts even. So every time we speak, we have a choice what we can say, an unlimited choice. Do we express words coming from skillful mental states or unskillful mental states? The states themselves might be mercurial, changing from one to another. Do we act from states of generosity, meaning working for the greater good? States of compassion and wisdom, or from states of greed and hatred and delusion? This is a vital question for all the precepts, and the fourth one in particular, for truthful speech. so as to move in the right direction. But that's not quite everything. There is something more to consider. The more we express certain mental states with our words, not to speak of our actions and our thoughts, the more we express them, the easier it will become to express them. The stronger our habit of expressing them will become, whether we're expressing positive or negative, skillful or unskillful mental states. They're like muscles insofar as the more they get used, our habits to express them, the stronger they'll become. And conversely, the less we express certain mental states, the harder it will become to carry on expressing them. The weaker our habits will be to express them. In other words, we'll break habits. So in this way, over time, what we say and what we don't say will have an effect on our character, an ever-increasing effect. And it will have an effect on our relations with other people. Other people will notice. If we express the skillful and don't express the unskillful, this is how we, step by step, purify our karma. This is what purifying our karma really means. It will also give a positive foundation for our meditation, for going deeper in our meditation practice. So this is why speech is so important. This is why speech plays such an important part in purifying our karma. And we can see it from another point of view as well. In this course, we're looking at the 5 precepts. But for order members, there's a list of 10 precepts which gives expression to a deeper or more intensive practice. 3 of those precepts refer to the body. 3 of the 10 refer to the mind. And 4 refer to speech. We'll look more at these 4 precepts later in the course on Sangha, spiritual community, communication and friendship, the 3rd course. The 4 precepts are truthful speech, kindly speech, helpful speech, and harmonious speech, an abstention of their opposites. So now we've had an introduction to speech, an introduction to karma. Let's look at this fourth precept in a little more detail, at how to practice in a little more detail. So, the fourth precept, I undertake to abstain from false speech. What is false speech? On the most gross level, we can say false speech is a conscious lie, a conscious deception. And the Buddha once said that there's no evil a man cannot do if they can consciously tell a lie. After that, I'd like to ask, have you consciously lied recently? You need a bit of honesty, especially with that set up to answer the question. And interesting, why did you do it? On a more refined level, there's a question of factual accuracy, or more precisely, false speech is factual inaccuracy. Maybe we're inaccurate through inattention, unawareness. And then, of course, there's exaggeration or minimization. There are 4 of something and we say there's 2 or there's 6. And why did we do this? What was the underlying motive or even craving behind exaggeration and minimization? Can we find it? Maybe a bit more subtle. Somebody asks to meet you in a cafe, have a coffee together, and really, you'd prefer not to meet them, while you're sitting there wondering, well, what can I say? Somebody from your family texts you, you look at your phone and you say, oh, what a pity. I'd love to, but... Or a similar example, you say, yes, but I can't do it this week, I'm busy. Let's try next week. Next week you're busy again. And so it goes on for a while until eventually the other person realizes that busy means no. But is there a way to be a bit more direct, a bit more truthful, whilst being considerate? Once again, there's the use of euphemisms. You don't really say what you mean. Something stays hidden. You say, I'm going to relax. What you really mean is, I'm going to go and get totally plastered, drunk. So these are a few ways we can break the precept. We can speak falsely. Questions for reflection, self-analysis. Why do we exaggerate or minimize? What are the motivations or the intentions? They might actually be quite healthy, but just don't quite manifest in the right way. Another question for our chat, for the groups in WhatsApp is, can you think of other ways of not being completely truthful? And one more question. If being truthful meant somebody had power over you, would you let them? Would you be truthful? Would you let them do it? So, a few words about false speech. One more thing I'd like to touch on, and that's telling stories in the sphere of false speech. Telling stories to ourselves, describing what happens by the stories we tell. Just a little observation I noticed about a conversation I had with somebody. I realized that I only actually remembered exactly what we said to each other for quite a short period of time. What was left was what I thought about what we said, rather than what we actually said. An example of telling a story. We can tell stories about ourselves, our partner, friends, family. We can tell stories about people we find difficult, somebody we argued with, about different groups of people in different cultures and countries. But what's more is when we look at the question of how do we tell stories? Judgmentally, critically, negatively, without any sympathy, without any understanding or even the desire to understand, even when the stories are about ourselves. And when we do tell stories about ourselves, about who we are, in a way we create who we are. We create our own identity. We also limit who we are. And what's more, perversely perhaps, we get attached to who we think we are, no matter how unsatisfying it is and how unsatisfied we express who we are and what our lot in life is from time to time. And if we limit who we are, it becomes more and more difficult to act differently. One story that people sometimes say is, I can't change. Maybe others can, but I can't. Or I have this habit and I can't change it. It might harm me and so on, but I can't change it. It's just who I am. And really, we don't even try to change. Don't even let the possibility that we can change float into our minds for a little instance and then depart. Change is simply impossible. And that's how we limit ourselves, with our stories. So what are our habitual stories about ourselves, about other people? And what can we do? Well, it's a step forward to learn to recognize our stories, make them conscious. What do we do next? The abrupt path is we can just stop telling them, turn our mind to something else, bring our attention to the body, for example, make a resolve not to indulge negative stories further. Or a more gradual approach is trying to find a positive story. As I said, stories tend to be negative. How about trying to find the positives in a story? The silver lining of the cloud, and focus on the positive. In my life, when I look at the things that have been most difficult, they've also given birth, as it were, to the best things of my life. We can simply examine what we're saying, look at what we're saying and ask ourselves, is it really true? Examine every statement, every word. Is it all true? Is it true for everybody? Is it true all the time? Are there exceptions? You can ask again and again, getting to the heart of the issue, getting to the root, the nub, the truth of the truth of things, and using accuracy and awareness to purify negative emotions. And simply we can ask, we can meditate on what's genuine or what's true in the story that I'm telling, what's valid, what's valuable. So the last point, we finished at last with false speech, is looking at how we create our identity, how we limit ourselves through the stories, the negative stories that often have a little bit of falsehood and unawareness attached to them, how we limit ourselves with them. We can now move on to truthful speech. Okay, so now to the positive side. With truthful communication, I purify my speech. With truthful communication, I purify my speech. And immediately we're faced with a translation issue into Russian. We can translate truthful into two ways. And this is relevant for the meaning of the precept, so I'll mention it here as well. We can say pravdivaya reč, pravdivaya, which means concrete truth, down-to-earth truth, literal truth. Or istinaya reč, istina, meaning a higher, maybe religious, poetic truth. Since to speak according to a higher truth, one needs to have realized a higher truth. Istina demands more of us. It's on a higher level. So that's what we chose as the translation for truthful. A question for you. Do you agree with our choice in translation? Those Russian speakers listening in English. Why or why not? But what does it mean to speak the truth? Let's look at this. Well, it means saying what we really think, even what we know deep down to be true, not shirking the issue. We could even say that speaking the truth means being prepared to be spiritually naked, not literally, but spiritually, in our communication. It means holding nothing back, showing everything of your personal experience, all of the good, all of the bad, all of the ugly, showing the warts and all, as the expression goes. It can be really inspiring when somebody really tells the truth about themselves, not their stories, but what really happens. And of course, you have to be a bit careful. You can't tell the truth to everybody. But speaking the truth also means knowing what we really think, knowing what we really know, and being able to express it. And what do we really know? We take away everything we've learnt at school, from teachers, from our parents. Take away everything that we've read from the media, online, from books, from our friends, and anybody else. What do we really know? Maybe a little less than we care to admit. So saying what we really know is also part of telling the truth. Questions for our chat. Who can you really speak the truth to? And what would you say if you were being willing to be spiritually naked in your communication? And lastly, if all your knowledge was taken away, everything you learned through external sources, what do you really know? What do you really think? So let's return to a question that we looked at before, that of how to avoid lying in difficult situations, how to tell the truth in difficult situations, when to lie or to say nothing, to keep quiet might seem kinder. Well, let's look at a story from the life of the Buddha. What did he do? It's the story of Kisagotami, a mother with a very young child, a baby, who died. The mother was overcome by grief. She kept carrying the child and asking how to bring it to life, carrying the baby, asking how to bring it to life. And eventually she came to the Buddha and asked him to. He didn't give her any advice. He didn't give her a lecture on impermanence. He didn't avoid the question either. Interestingly enough, he said, I can bring your child to life, but under one condition. You must bring me a mustard seed from a household where no one has died. Interesting that he started off by giving her hope. But of course, she couldn't find a household where no one had died. And she learned by direct experience that everyone faced death. And eventually she was able to accept the death of her child. The story is a shining example of how to communicate truth with kindness, remembering there are limitless ways to reply. The more deeply rooted we are in matter, the more sensitive, the more creative we are, aware, the deeper our wisdom, the more we will be able to reply with truth and kindness. So talking of truthful speech and kindly speech. And thinking about the Sangha, remembering also that we saw that generosity or dana was one of the means to unify the Sangha, one of the means to create even Sangha. And there were 4 in total, and another one of them is priyavadita, which can be translated straightforwardly as kindly speech. So expressing our metta in the Sangha to others by kindly speech is a way of unifying the Sangha, a way of creating Sangha. The 3rd and 4th means are, respectively, meaningful activity, doing something that really helps people in the world, not just making money. And 4thly, exemplification, meaning practicing what we preach, walking the talk. So these are the 4 ways: generosity or dana, kindly speech, meaningful activity, and exemplification of unifying the Sangha, of creating Sangha. I'll briefly mention 2 more kinds of positive speech. Firstly, as I mentioned before, rejoicing in merits, giving voice to the positive qualities we see in others or ourselves, which again means being able to put our experience into words. And confession of faults, not hiding our faults and our weaknesses, and wanting to overcome them, and expressing our wish to overcome our faults and weaknesses helps us do it. So rejoicing in merits and confession of faults. Each theme has its own verse in the 7-fold puja, which we chant as a means of developing the bodhicitta. I'd like to touch on also the value of dialogues. What is a dialogue? Well, a dialogue addresses one question. It stays with one question. It doesn't jump from question to question, but stays with one. And you need awareness to know even what the question is, and concentration to stay with it. What's the benefit? Well, new dimensions of meaning can emerge when you do stay with one question, when you don't just jump from thing to thing endlessly. You can penetrate deeply, more deeply into it, contact a deeper level of understanding, a new insight. And when a number of people engage in a dialogue together, it can be enriching for everybody partaking. So the value of dialogues. Remembering our translation question, is truthful speech best translated as pravdiva or istinaya? Worth bearing in mind also there is literal truth and poetic truth. What is the distinction between them, between literal and poetic truth? Well, literal truth is factual, concrete, rational. It accords with our direct experience, our experience through the senses. It expresses scientific truth and recounts history. Poetic truth uses images and words, but without attaching them to objects, concrete objects in a sensory world. Rather, it appeals to our imagination. It can communicate emotional truth found in myths and legends and in the words of poets, the images used by an artist. Literal truth is a language of the head. Poetic truth is a language of the heart. Literal truth is found in the socialist realism of the communists. Poetic truth is found as a medium conveying all religious truth. The medium conveying religious truth, Buddhism included. The medium of conveying spiritual and mystic experience. Literal truth is factually accurate, rational, rooted in the external world. Science is based on literal truth. Science is based on verifiable and repeatable experiments. Our material world, our civilizations were built on it. When the poet, painter, engraver and visionary, William Blake, wrote the words, "To see the world in a grain of sand," he was talking poetic and not literal truth. It's his own sphere. It is a genuine means, a genuine medium of communication. And both literal and poetic truth are considered dimensions of truthful speech. Literal truth and poetic truth don't have to be in conflict. They don't have to be in conflict, even though they often are. The conflict between communism and Christianity, science and religion, history and myth, or more personally, the personal conflict between head and heart. We do need to hold both literal and poetic truth in a yet greater truth, higher level of awareness, a higher state of consciousness that encompasses and values and understands both. Let's finish off our examination of truthful speech by looking at silence, the value of silence. Silence is golden, we are told. We can explore the value of communicating in silence. Looking at somebody in the eye and being looked at, sensing and being sensed, just being in a vibrant, still, aware silence where nothing is demanded of you other than merely staying open and aware. So, the value of silence. So, morning again, and we'll finish with a guided meditation. Remembering, of course, that all the precepts are expressions of the first precept, expressions of metta, loving kindness, putting ourselves in the shoes of another, imaginative identification, solidarity with all that lives. And in the fourth precept it's applied to speech. So we'll do the metta bhavana, focused on rejoicing in merits, focusing on putting positive qualities into words, preparing the ground for expressing them to real people. So that's what we'll do. But let's take a good posture, as ever, just so you never forget. I'll put a bolster behind me to sit up straight. We can begin. So allowing yourself to settle into sitting in your room, expanding your attention out into the room. and listening to all the sounds around you. And drawing your attention inwards now, focusing on your body, seated here. Looking to become aware of all the different sensations in your body, the endless flow of changing sensations. And looking to notice any feelings of warmth, pleasure, and confidence, making them stronger with your attention. And now bring to mind a good quality that you possess, maybe bringing to mind a good quality a friend has said you possess, if that's a little easier. Thinking of a concrete situation where that quality manifested, where it appeared in the world for others to see. And imagine telling a friend about this quality manifesting in the world. What would you say? Will you find the exact words to express the heart of the issue? And notice your friend's reaction to your words in your mind's eye. Notice your reaction. Now bring to mind a good friend, quickly choosing a good friend. And bringing to mind one of their good qualities, one of their deeper qualities. Even maybe trying to see their deepest quality. And bringing to mind a concrete situation where this quality manifested. Imagine telling them about their good quality, rejoicing in their merits, in their good quality. Trying to express it as clearly as you can. And looking to notice their reaction and being told. looking to notice your reaction, telling them, how does it feel? And then a neutral person, quickly choosing a neutral person. And bringing to mind one of their qualities. It's harder when we know somebody less well. Maybe we can imagine what their friends would say. And imagining that quality manifesting in a real situation. And imagine telling them about it, finding the words to express it precisely. and seeing what effect it has on them. Noticing what effect it has on you. And finally, thinking of a difficult person, an enemy, even, and looking to find a positive quality in them, looking to sift out the positive from the negative, even if we experience the negative more strongly. Maybe imagine what one of their friends would value and see as positive. Letting this positive quality manifest in a concrete situation. And imagine telling them about their positive quality, rejoicing in their merits. What effect would it have on them, hearing your words? What effect does it have on you, saying them? And now, bringing your attention back to your body, seated here. To the endless flow of changing sensations in your body. And expanding your awareness out into your room. And listening to all the sounds around you. And when you feel ready, slowly and gently opening your eyes. to finish the practice. So, time for a little resume of what we've looked at in the course of this video. We've looked at how to purify karma and the importance of purifying speech as a means of transforming greed, hatred and delusion. Transforming speech by avoiding false speech. Anything from avoiding conscious lies to the more refined forms of subtle deformation. And increasing truthful speech. Not only factual accuracy, but saying what we really think. Combining being truthful and kind. And rejoicing in merits. And looking at deeper dimensions of speech. For example, literal truth and poetic truth. And lastly, looking at the value of silence. Questions for our groups? Since the poisons of greed, hatred and delusion can dominate our minds, well, but not in equal proportions, that means there's some where greed predominates, greed types, some where hate predominates, hate types, and some where delusion predominates, deluded types. Greed type, hate type, or deluded type, which are you? It's an important question because it affects how we practice. Hate type should focus on the positive. Greed type should avoid feeding their craving, so focusing on the negative, for example. And what are our habitual stories? Another question, do you agree with our choice of translation for truthful? Istina, not pravdiva. Why not? Who can you speak the truth to? And what subjects would you talk about if telling the naked truth? Don't need to give details, just the general subjects. And what would you know if all your knowledge was taken away? What would be left? And which do you feel more at home with? Literal or poetic truth? Our practice for the week or the weeks to come. Carrying on meditating, focusing on rejoicing in merits, maybe, and putting positive qualities into words, as well as in everyday life, in all our relationships, trying to reduce all forms of false speech, increasing truthful speech, adding new dimensions to our communication. Next week, we'll look at developing awareness in everyday life and looking to cease doing that which dulls our awareness, the fifth precept. And my wish for the week is a week where new dimensions of communication unfold, with richer, deeper relationships as a consequence.